All right, so once again, welcome to everybody to the VLC today, the Welcome to the Supporting Student Success VLC. Also, if we have anybody who have come from the CTAE UDL SIG to join us today, we say welcome to them as well. And so we have the recording on. We'll have that recording posted on the Excellence website in a few days, along with the slides here, because I know that you're going to want to reference the information that is being shared today. And our agenda for today is we're going to have our greetings. I've already encouraged all of you to put a hello in the chat and where you are around the state, because we want to, part of our goal is to network and know where there are other people who are UDL enthusiasts and who are people that are really excited about thinking deeply about how we can best serve our learners. And I want to give a shout out to Kang Hee, who is here, Kang Hee Hong, who is from ICCB. Thank you for joining us. So today, the main part of our presentation, our time together, will be to hear from our esteemed Supporting Student Success Foundations of Universal Design for Learning specialists. And then we're also going to spend just a little bit of time at the end, looking forward to the future. And that, what I'm going to heads up for that, I'm going to ask you if you have any thoughts about something that you would like to see in FY26 for this learning community. So without any further ado, let's say thank you to our S3 Foundations of UDL specialists for coming today. We have Laura Holland, Natalie Dominguez, Michael Anderson. They're all here live. And we also have a recording of Rachel Montgomery. So we thank all of them. And here, before we get started, here's your assignment as attendees. No, you have something to do. And let me tell you what that is. As each of these people are talking and sharing with you how they have taken what they learned in the training and operationalized it in their practice, I really want to encourage you to pick out that one cool concept that made you go, oh, aha, I could do that too. Or, oh, that makes sense. That is super cool. That is something that I could use. And so I want to just encourage you, if you have that aha moment, go ahead and just put it in the chat. And then also think of a question that you have and put that in the chat as well. We may not have a ton of time for open questions like question and answer, because I want to make sure we have time to let everybody have ample time to speak. But the people that are sharing can answer your questions in the chat. So as I turn it to each person, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, tell them a little bit about who they are, what they're doing, where they're located, and then go through how they are using UDL in their practice. So any questions or comments for the common good before we get started? Okay, all right. So Laura is first. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her slide up and turn it over to her. Thank you, Laura, for getting us started.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'm Laura Holland. I am located in Bloomington Normal, Illinois, and I teach at Heartland Community College in their adult ed program. So currently I'm teaching Math 1 and 2, English 4, and then work readiness. And then during the day, I work for the University of Illinois on the Extension Workforce Development Team. We support Extension staff across the state of Illinois. So kind of getting an opportunity to integrate UDL in both situations. But today I'm going to focus on what I've done with Heartland. So what I have for you is kind of what I focused on when I went through the course with Sarah and Tara. So I focused on just kind of one area in the UDL guidelines. So the principle I chose was representation. And then I focused on building knowledge, but specifically connecting prior knowledge to new learning. So we kind of used this concept over 2 days with a place value instruction with lessons and assignments through that. So kind of got like 4 different areas that, we were kind of asked to think about and kind of apply to what we were doing with UDL in that setting. So the reason I selected this particular kind of principle and consideration with connecting prior knowledge is like I have a lot of diverse learners, as most of us do, between the age range, I've had them as young as 16 and as old as like 65. So So really broad area there. So really trying to connect that prior knowledge and like help them to understand. And a lot of times I've noticed, especially the longer I teach, is that a lot of times my learners, they do have the background knowledge, but they don't really recognize the relevance to the concepts. So we spend a lot of time talking about math in terms of what they already know in different formats. So we talk about a lot about like in real life type of application. Um, but then also kind of helps make math less intimidating. And we talk a lot about math anxiety in my class and how that presents itself and how we kind of combat that in those settings. Um, and then with kind of looking at that background knowledge, we have an opportunity to help them realize what they already know about the concept. A lot of times when we start digging into it, they recognize, oh, I'm already using this here. So like place value, right away they were connecting money to what they knew about place value. And then it helps with language barrier by kind of pre-teaching some of our concepts and connecting it. I have a lot of students from like different countries, so maybe like place value looks a little bit different, depending on their, number system. So we do a lot of that. So what I was already kind of doing in the classroom that I didn't necessarily recognize as UDL myself, but as I went through the course, was kind of able to pinpoint that. And I have some slides after this that kind of give some images of from the class what we're doing. But each one of my classes, I start with some kind of focus activity. So I present them with something connected to, so for like place value, they were giving an image, a place value chart with like discs with amounts labeled on them. And so they're given a few minutes to think about it, and then they're asked to put done in the chat. I don't ask them for the answer. So, they're not really put on the spot. And then we move to a group discussion about it. So maybe some students will talk about how they have worked through the problem, whatever it is, or what kind of answers they came up with. So it gives them an opportunity to kind of like test it out without really being put on the spot and having a little bit more flexibility. And again, we use that like a lot of concept anchoring too. So a lot of visuals with everything that we're doing. So it's not just all text based, we're kind of giving that multiple ways of representation. So we use images, we use videos, we use different types of assignments. I might use a live worksheet or an annotation assignment or having them like upload a picture that they find. So a lot of different ways of kind of like accessing that information. We do a lot of advanced organizers or graphic organizers. And then often I will do a lot of pre-teaching and modeling for whatever it is we're doing, which I'll show you some of that in just a bit too. So over the kind of 2 days, we started with our focus activity specific to place value to kind of see like kind of where they were at. We did our group discussion, we did our answering and modeling. But then for our advanced organizers, I taught them about the KWLS chart. And we add the S for, so it's like, what they know, what they want to know, what they've learned after we have the learning experience. And then the S for like, what are they still challenged by? And like, how do we address that? So we would do the K and W on the whiteboard prior to the place value lesson, kind of get an idea of like what they already know about it and what do they want to know about it. And sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes they have no knowledge about what actually it is other than, oh, I know I use it with, money or budgeting or something. So, we kind of taught that, but then also pre-teaching like what is KWLS. So we kind of talk about it as like, like when we stretch before we exercise, we're kind of stretching our brains to think about what we're doing. So we talk about like our focus activity is kind of one way that we're kind of trying to understand like what we already know about a topic. And I do a lot of like live worksheets with them where they do that with like a partner where they can talk through it with somebody. So it's very rare that they're doing something fully independently. They always have some kind of support in the classroom, whether through each other, through our group discussions, different things like that. So another thing that I did is was always trying to like bring in tools for them. So for this particular lesson, we used school AI. So they were able to use an AI tool it would ask them different place value questions and then give them feedback based on what their answer was. So if they didn't give a right answer, it would kind of talk them through being on the right track, or like what they need to think about. And then at the end of the session, it would give them different tools or resources to do more practice, which then we kind of integrated into that like S part of our KWLS uh, chart in an individual assignment. So a couple of things that, after going through this, that I kind of pinpointed, like what I can continue to add is like providing more variety in like assessment strategies. So, not just giving them like a quiz at the end, but like what are some other things that we do? So, for this one, they kind of did some, kind of writing up their own budgets and like kind of looking at where we might make a mistake in budgeting if we're uncertain about place value, and like kind of maybe to how to line things up, or, different ideas like that. But then also kind of mapping some of those connections to upcoming instruction. So this like idea of looking ahead versus like, remember when we did this. So how are we going to take this and integrate it into the future of what we're doing, and where might we see place value in other things we're doing? So we talk about, in next week, we're going to do multi-digit multiplication, and how is place value going to come into play? And they have some opportunity to talk about that. Or maybe we do like a little exit ticket where they just write up a little something about it. So Sarah, if you can go to the next slide, I can kind of show some of the things that we did. So this was our KWLS that we did on our whiteboard so I teach fully virtually, so I don't think I mentioned that. So everything we do is online via Zoom. So this was like the pre-teaching, at the bottom was what, I kind of told them and we talked about with place value, and then they had an opportunity. So usually I make it where they can either put sticky notes themselves, or they can write it in the chat to me, or if they just want to say it out loud, whatever works best for them. Again, different types of learners, different levels of technology access and ease. So we did our, K and W, then we did our 2 days of learning, then we came back to this and we did our L, and then in a separate assignment, I had them independently do their S. So what were they still struggling with? And then we put that on the board, and then I did a screenshot and uploaded it into our module so that they had access to that all the time. And can you go to the next one, please, Sarah? So these are just some of the visuals that we use. So like my focus activity looked similar to what's on the bottom, but instead the discs had the actual like value on it. So in the 10,000s, it was written, the number was also written on the disc. So they were seeing it in text, they were seeing it, in number form, they were seeing the visual. And then, we kind of went through the process of discussion of how we were actually kind of writing that out to give them the practice with it, and to give them multiple ways to see how that can be expressed in different ways. Okay, I think there's one more slide. Okay, so yeah, so this was one of the things that we did too. We did a word cloud when we first started talking about ways that they use place value. So they had, an opportunity to just type in something that, they're already maybe connecting with place value. So a lot of them talk about, their paycheck or money, helping their kids with homework, or looking at their bills or their budgets. And then this was just a sample screenshot of like the instructor side of the AI. So it would tell me, what the question was and what was happening with the student, so that I could then kind of help them, but then also see, what it's recommending for them. So then we could have a conversation about, what this resource is and like how they can kind of connect that. So that was kind of what we did for our place value, like incorporating those UDL principles.
That's awesome, Laura. Thank you so much. Let me remove the spotlight. And let's give her a round of applause, everybody, either virtually or, yeah, there we go. We really appreciate it. And for those who may have entered as Laura was talking, we have 3 live presenters today that have all finished the Supporting Student Success Foundations of Universal Design for Learning Specialist training, and they're coming and sharing with us how they have infused UDL or maybe up their UDL game a bit. As Laura just said, she was doing this, but then she thought about it and okay, maybe I can do this as well. So I really appreciate that. And your assignment as people who are listening is, and a couple of you have already done it, put something in the chat. What was your aha moment as Laura was talking? And we're going to transition in just a minute to our next presenter, Natalie. But I would say, is there anybody who wants to share something real quickly, or does anybody have a quick question for Laura before we go on to Natalie? You can unmute or put it in the chat.
I put a question there. I wanted to know how she made her word cloud on Zoom, what program she used, or if it was on whiteboard and she was typing, or the students were typing, or.
I use Mentimeter, so I can like put the link in the chat for them, or I can display a QR code that they can scan with their phone, and like I'll tell them how to do that. Or it will tell them like go to this website and put in this code. So there's like 3 different ways that they can get to it. But you go to Mentimeter and then it will like give them a prompt, they type in the number, and then it will just show on the screen as the words go in. So I can just share my screen and let them see that.
Okay, can you write that in the chat for us,
Sure.
please? Okay, thank you.
We all love a new resource, don't we? Yeah, love that. And Kang Hee says she likes the S of that, what you still want to know. That's awesome. Yep. And I like that thought, Laura, of let's look forward, not just backward, but let's look forward, anticipate, and kind of engage of what, what's needed in the future. And Rennie said that she likes the idea of starting with an activity that does not put the spotlight on any single student and simply allows them to review the task and prepare them for the next task. And the acknowledgement that the students may need time to think and not necessarily have to have, that they don't have to have that answer right away. All right, so let's move on. Thank you again, Laura, and now we're going to move to Natalie. So Natalie, can you introduce yourself and take us through what you are using as UDL in your practice?
Yes, so welcome everyone. Thank you for hopping on. My name is Natalie Dominguez. I am currently at McHenry County College. I serve as the coordinator of curriculum and instruction, and just a little background. So this role was reclassified to focus more on curriculum and instruction aspects. And so being a staff member here and joining the UDL cohort, my initial thought process was thinking about, how can staff members or administrators utilize UDL in day-to-day work. And so one project that we, were hoping to tackle in the office here was website updates. And so this is where I took our project and incorporated UDL principles and guidelines, because we've always noticed our main method of communication is with students via phone call. And so we are constantly on the phone here in the office. And one question we had was, how do we direct students to our website, or how do we increase accessibility to our website? And UDL was really fundamental in increasing that accessibility. So if we go to the next slide, I had actually created, when we were ongoing in the cohort, I wanted to create a student survey to see if students, were navigating to the website, were they finding it easy to use, was it difficult? And so we only had 19 students participate. I did realize we had another survey ongoing at the time, so I think that kind of inhibited some responses. But at least 8 of those individuals had a hard time finding information. Some was difficult to read, and then others, maybe it wasn't mobile friendly. So that was really vital information to gather at that time. Some takeaways from that survey would be to potentially, ask our instructors to survey students in class, or maybe have a conversation of, have you ever used the website? or what would you like to see on the website? Another point would be to provide translation to the survey questions in general to increase accessibility and ease of the survey through that method. But on the next slide, I'll dive into how I incorporated some of the guidelines into our website updates. So for instance, design options for perception. I wanted to focus on the representation of diversity, a diversity of perspectives and identities in authentic ways. And so fortunately, we are we have multilingual staff members here within our office. So as you can see, we have staff members who speak Chinese, German, Hindi, Punjabi, Russian, Spanish, Ukrainian, and Urdu. So with showcasing that information, you know, sometimes that could be the triggering point of having a student call our office to inquire about our programs, knowing that someone speaks the same language as them within our office is really vital in creating those connections for students that would potentially get them into the classrooms later on. Another UDL guideline that I focused in on was design options for welcoming interests and identities, specifically addressing biases, threats, and distractions. So before the update, this is a new update included on the slide. It was all the information of our programs was just listed and blasted on the page. And so addressing, you know, the overwhelming fact of maybe it's too much information, or maybe students would just need to or want to just click on one program and see, okay, I just need ESL. I don't need to dive into programs that I could take further on, because they could get that information from us once they're in the office, once they're connected to a staff member. So we wanted to lessen the amount of information. And if students wanted to explore on the website, they could easily click on the drop-down menus and find that information. We also, to address potential threats or, you know, a distraction, we have a chat option of connecting with the office, noting their first name, last name, email, phone number, and then we also decided to include the list your preferred or native language. That way students would be connected to someone who speaks their native language right away to kind of help further that strong initial interaction. And then if you go to the next slide, I also focused on design options for interaction. So again, varying and honoring the methods for response, navigation, and movement. We have our office phone number on here. We do have an interactive map on the website as well to kind of help students find our office, because it is a bit tricky. We have our phone number if students are wanting to call and speak to someone directly. We have our email listed in case, you know, speaking isn't a strong suit for students. And then, like I said, we also have this option to have students put down their information and have someone reach out to them. And they can also indicate which program they're interested in, as well as indicate which language they speak to help further that connection. And then on the next slide, just some next steps. So I will say, you know, it's been a lot of follow-up with our marketing team as they control our main website. We did come to find out, so we currently have Polish and Spanish translations via Google. However, that software is outdated, so we're unable to add more languages because we were hoping to have Chinese as well as Ukrainian. So I'm trying to figure out a way to include possible instructions of how to translate things on mobile devices. I think oftentimes it's assumed that, you know, everyone might have everything translated, which, you know, if our students do, that's fantastic. However, if they don't, finding a way to get that information to them on how to translate that material. Or possibly even, you know, having that direction during orientation, if we can have students figure out how to translate everything on their phone. That way they can access it more easily, potentially having our instructors help out with that aspect. And of course, next steps would be just continuing to incorporate UDL in day-to-day operations and projects. So that was my project and my work with UDL.
Thanks, Natalie, and that is fantastic. I put it in the chat, but I'm just going to say it again. I love seeing that UDL's everywhere. I mean, because we're learning and we're interacting everywhere. And yes, Vicky, let's give some applause. Thank you for leading us in applause for Natalie. And let me see if there's anybody that has a question for Natalie. I know we have some other people here that are not necessarily in educator roles, so maybe they enjoyed seeing how to UDL every day. And we've got a mention in the chat that Laura likes how you started with a student survey to get a feel for what improvements could be made, and having the voices involved, that's so essential. We all want to be heard, right? So yeah, that's awesome. Anybody else have something they want to mention that really resonated with them from what Natalie shared, or have a question for Natalie before we move on to Michael? All right, remember you can continue to put things in the chat if you think of something. And I also, it sings to my heart that every one of these presentations is like so different. Because everybody took the information and applied it to their individual practice. So now I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and go ahead and tell us about your project.
Hey, happy Thursday, everybody. Nice to meet you all. Looking forward to working together and learning from each other, for sure. So in the evenings, I teach adult ed at Elgin Community College. I also work in the daytime managing the internship and apprenticeship program at Oakton College. And so I've definitely brought UDL concepts into both positions, and kind of learned, from other things I've done as well, how to incorporate these ideas and concepts to really help better serve our students, whether it's interns or, also in the classroom. I'm also a real estate broker, and so the lesson we're about to go over is something that I kind of use more in real estate, but definitely tie it well into the classroom with students to really gain their attention and really make it relevant. Because when lessons are relevant, students definitely want to learn and are excited to learn and want to learn more, for sure. So, okay. So what I picked for UDL in particular is the column relating to design multiple means of engagement, the row being access, welcoming interests and identities, optimize choice and autonomy, optimize relevance, value and authenticity, nature, joy, and play, and address biases, threats, and distractions. So I think the keywords there for my lesson is relevance, joy, and play, for sure. Making things relevant, but also making the lessons fun as well. And so I chose this in particular because I really enjoy integrating student goals, both in the classroom, but also professional in their future lives and careers into the curriculum to really get their interest and really make them notice what they're learning and how they can use it in their future lives and future success. And I love blending these lessons also with the ASC standards as well, connecting it to future career growth, exploration, and also importantly to build confidence. Because when you're confident, it really, really helps, especially on those days where they're taking the tests, for sure. And the overall importance I see is students who perceive lessons as relevant to their personal lives tend to have increased perseverance, better retention, and better rates as well. Because as we all know, the big words in the classroom are gains and grads, for sure. Also creates more authentic discussions. It opens communication, allows students to work together and feel more comfortable asking questions, not just to me, but also to each other, and greater awareness of the importance of these lessons and how they can be applicable in everyday life as well. So just kind of put down a few standards that I learned from my proficiency training last year. So 2MDI, I won't go over everything, 2MD16 and 4G1. So in particular, these are the lessons that I kind of focus around these particular standards, as well as apply the UDL methods to that and how we kind of go over these and how we learn these particular objectives. So you can go on to the next. It's sort of a quick little show. So what I do in the classroom is actually incorporate UDL by using measuring tape to allow students to actually measure the room, to really understand how to find the area of irregular polygons. So we'll first kind of work together through the board, just looking at basic shapes, understanding some of the basic concepts. But really, once they get those concepts down, I put them into different groups and I have them actually work and to determine the area of the classroom that we're in, and kind of have a game play where they're going to be replacing the flooring. So I bring in sort of the real estate stuff into that way. But students really, really enjoy this. They find it a lot of fun. They find it very relevant and something they could definitely use, in their own, future. And sort of the exit ticket, which I have, which is a lot of fun as well, is, once students get the concept down, I have them actually go and measure a room in their own home. And based on what they want, whether carpeting, whether hardwood, whatever, I'll give them sort of a price per square foot and then ask them to kind of come back to me and let me know like what the overall cost would be then to replace the flooring, in that particular room. So again, it really ties in the relevance. It makes things a lot of fun, kind of bridges, UDL with the classroom. And again, something they could actually use and see is relevant in their future for sure. And after doing this, I really noticed students a lot more interested with this, feel more, relevance with mathematics, a lot easier. And again, more comfortable working with each other, asking questions and communicating, whatever issues they may have. And students are really wanting to do more of these kind of things. They feel it's really cool. Like, okay, I can replace the flooring. How much to replace the fencing or to build new, whatever. So it definitely kind of bridges other things and makes students really excited to go on and to learn more and, realize how relevant math really is. Even if it's tedious, it's definitely advantageous and beneficial for now as well as the future. So yeah, sort of my little UDL thing that I brought in, and definitely make it fun in the classroom for sure.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, let's give him a round of applause, everybody. And don't you want to be in Michael's class after that? I mean, I can see how it's like so much more fun to do that than to sit and just work. So I appreciate you nurturing joy and play. And let's see, and we've got, let me see. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, you guys. I was trying to remove the spotlight and I was doing something wonky. So, yeah, we've got a couple of great comments in the chat. And I think there's a question about, can you tell us how you teach? Are you in person? Are you online?
Oh, good question. So it is in person. I use this for the in-person class. It could be done virtual, I totally believe, but it would be more of a challenge, definitely. So when it's in person, these kind of activities just sort of, become a little bit more feasible for sure. And I can actually bring the measure tapes to the classroom and, kind of work through it together. But yeah, I've not done this virtually, but I suppose you could for sure.
I think that's one of the things the pandemic has taught us, that we can figure out some way to do things virtually if we need to. And I know that the number of you that are on here teach virtually, so you've gotten really good at it. And one of the other comments was making that connection between academic and professional skills. I love that, Michael, you talked about real estate, but maybe you're going to be a contractor. Maybe you're going to, there's just all kinds of applications for needing to have that area defining that accurately. So thank you. And Natalie says that it would also provide further real world connections to other subjects down the road too. And word gets out, like, oh my goodness, we got to move around and do things and like manipulate stuff. And it was so much fun. And so thanks for doing that. Anybody have any other questions for Michael or comments?
Oh, hello? Sorry.
Yeah, go right ahead, Regina.
I quite can't. Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was just put a quick comment in there. I'm sure a lot of people have had this experience. Damn. Sorry. But I was always told I was terrible at math. You're just very linguistically intelligent, very verbal intelligence, but your math is low. I hated my teachers. It was so frustrating. And then when I had to go to get my master's degree, I had to do a statistics class, and the teacher was so frenetic. Like everything was just like 100 miles a minute. And I just had to take the book home and just do it myself. And then I was like, oh, I'm not dumb. I can understand numbers, but the teaching was just so fast. And I didn't know why he was doing what he was doing. So I really wish, Michael, that I could have had a teacher or have teaching such as that when I was back in the 80s. That didn't happen. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
important to really build a strong foundation and you
Yeah.
build upon that, right? So I think it's very important to sort of, do things in a particular strategic method, and make things relevant. When you actually practice with math, it makes it a lot easier to sort of digest and comprehend, and it sticks with you when you see it as relevant as well. So I'm a huge component of this. And, even with the internship and apprenticeship students have at Oakton, though it's not the classroom, it's very, very beneficial for them to really see the relevance. And that's why they look to do an internship to connect with their learning, theoretical knowledge and bring it into the practical realm in the workplace. And it makes them much more motivated, which is key. And same thing in the classroom. When students see it as relevant and something they can connect to their future life, they're much more motivated. Retention numbers are good, and they feel more confident going in at the testing center when they take the actual exams. Because I do primarily teach levels 5, 6. So it's really, the end of the semester as we're now for my summer class, students are testing, and it's really exciting. And when students finish the last test, it's like, it's awesome. And
Yeah.
that's the first goal, then we, talk about the next goal, getting into credit coursework, of course.
Also just self-esteem. Like, I'm not bad at math, but I thought, until my 30s, I couldn't do it. So I think it's important, just even for adults, like, who are just like, I could actually do this, So yeah, I think it's very important that people have that confidence that they can figure it out. So thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, Michael, I love that you brought up confidence. You mentioned that several times, and there's no substitute for confidence. I mean, they can just help in so many ways, and that self-esteem that Regina mentioned. And I think also in seeing it as like, I am not understanding that in this way, but that doesn't mean that I can't do it. It means that I need to look for a different way. And I hope that all of our students and all of us are seeing that play out in so many ways. Yes, they're learning that in Michael and Laura's classrooms, and they're learning that from what Natalie's doing in her program, but then hopefully they're generalizing that to other places as well. Like, oh, I'm learning how, not just content, but how to learn, which is huge, because they can take that way beyond your classroom or anyone else's classroom, and they carry that confidence with them as well. So that's
Michael,
awesome.
I have to thank you so much. I have to share something. I had a very old student who now I'm older than her, but when I had her, I was younger, and she was from Russia, and she gifted me with not one or two or three, but the 3 calculus books she wrote. I always show them to my students that we have such diversity. We have an auto mechanic, we have, and when I do that, they always talk about the math they took and what they liked. And then they discuss in different countries how Americans' way of division is not as good as the European method. And so math is everywhere, even in ESL classes. So, but thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and math is in every life. And thank you, Laura, for sharing the power of yet. I haven't done it or I can't do it yet, but that doesn't mean we can't in the future. So thank you so, so much. That's awesome. All right, so the last presentation that we have today is from Rachel Montgomery, and she was not able to be here today, but one of the fantastic things about all the resources that we have is we can be all over the state coming together in this meeting for an hour. We can have all of our presenters from all over the state, and Rachel is she put together about a 5-minute recording. So I'm going to play that at this point, and you know what? I need to make sure. I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second, you guys, because I'm not sure I enabled the video sound. So let me do that to make sure that you can hear it well. Okay, now we're ready to go.
Hi, my name is Rachel Montgomery. I'm the Associate Director for Workforce Readiness at Adult Education at Heartland Community College. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about my experience with learning and implementing UDL. Part of my position is creating course content and then also instructing in that course content every semester. So I was very excited to see how UDL could help me as an instructor and help my students in the classroom. But I won't lie. When I first looked at everything, I was really overwhelmed because it has so many great ideas. But as educators, we already have to do a lot in our classroom, have to cover a lot of different topics, and trying to incorporate everything all at once can just feel overwhelming. So I wanted to share a couple tips that were helpful for me. One was to keep the goal in mind, and that's the idea that we're creating this purposeful, reflective classroom where students have agency, where the learning is helpful and authentic to them, and where they feel like they can take action to actively participate in their own learning. Starting small was really helpful, so I picked just a couple sections to really focus on. And how I picked those were not only what spoke to me as an educator, but what I thought would have the greatest impact on my students at the time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I did, and you will see that it's very digital, multimodal approached. That's just because for my students that were currently in my classroom, I thought that would be what helps them the most. We teach on Zoom. And so sometimes there's that assumption that students are very technologically advanced. But for my students, they may not have a lot of experience with Canvas or the browser that they are pulling up Canvas through. And one thing that was very helpful for me is to start incorporating more emphasis on learner choice on how Canvas is presented to them. An easy way to do that was to just go through Canvas and go through the browsers that our students use and show them how they can change some of those accessibility features, how they can manipulate text, color, how they can get the voice reader, so that if they need that or if they choose to use that because that's their preferred learning style, they are empowered to do so. For my own lectures on Zoom, I thought it was very helpful and to focus on and be very mindful of putting multimedia ways of learning the language in there. Those can be very simple things like closed caption videos, always making sure your videos have closed caption, right? Always making sure that's enabled on your Zoom. Putting in more interactive polls, adding infographics, adding more images to reflect the text that you're talking about, and looking at things like podcasts, TikToks, news clips, all those ways that you can engage students on a different level and that for them may be more what they're used to in everyday life. The flip side is that I also wanted the material that the students are engaging in producing to reflect that. So I made some simple course designs for the end of this semester to incorporate more use of digital media for the students. That includes just encouraging them to upload alternative formats. You know, can you take this writing assignment and make it into a short video or make it into a poem or a song, right? Can you make it into a drawing? Can you pick and choose which one of those you think is most impactful and engageful for you to do? And as long as, again, you're still meeting that criteria, explain to the students that is an opportunity for them to take control of their own learning. I also wanted to regularly update my course material. As we all know, our world is always changing and, you know, technology maybe changes faster than everything else. And in a lot of ways that sometimes our students aren't always aware of or aren't equipped to take some skills that may have worked for, say, reading a newspaper, translating it to a TikTok. So making sure that my course reflects that and will continue to reflect it. The last thing, and this is kind of just a personal passion of mine, but making sure that I deepen that critical media theory. So things like identifying biases in headlines and captions and making sure I'm not just focusing on one kind of media, comparing, you know, the same news story across multiple platforms, discussing influencers, bots, sponsored content. So just making sure that my course is reflective of the landscape that my students are finding themselves in. So in conclusion, applying UDL to my classroom, I really do think has transformed my teaching. It makes me more intentional, more inclusive, and more reflective as an educator. I think that even just taking a few of those principles and putting it into your classroom really helps to engage a more diverse range of students, and it helps them feel supported with their strengths and equips them to take agency of their own learning and to thrive in this ever evolving world. So thank you, and I hope you found some of my thoughts useful, and I really encourage you, if you have a chance, to take part in this program. It is a great way to learn more about some very fantastic theory that can just really help you as an educator.
Right. Thank you to Rachel.
Hi.
There we go. All right. Okay, question about where can I find the UDL guidelines? Great question, and let me go grab that from a different screen. Unless there's anybody else who wants to grab it real quickly. I will actually, since you guys see the screen, why don't I just go show you CAST, C-A-S-T. Guidelines. Okay. They are the folks that have put together the UDL, which are, thank you, Laura. Look at that. Look how quickly Laura came up with that. I appreciate the support. I wonder why this is not, okay. That was not what I wanted to have. Hers is better. So let me do hers. Oh, that just brought, okay. So the UDL guidelines, there they are. And there is a new 3.0 version. So I want to mention that to you as well. So you want to make sure that you have the updated version. The other thing that's really cool is that's clickable. So if you want to, Michael kind of in his, he said, hey, I'm gonna focus on this one and here's the information about it. So if you want to click through, that's there. How old or new or old is this? So that's a great question. I think UDL has been around for about 20 years, the scientifically framework. And then there was a 2.0 version. 3.0 is almost a year old, and they took about a year and did a lot of different surveying of the field and got a lot of input. I would say the biggest thing that is the difference between 2.0 and 3.0 is that it really focuses on identity. It really thinks about that learner-centered, and I think all of our presenters today alluded to that. Like, it's really important to meet people where they are and to honor them as individuals. We all want to be honored for what we already know. Even Leva talked about, like, hey, the way we did division, I like better in my country. I mean, honoring that and say, okay, let's build on that. So that's a part of that as well. And okay. So thank you, Laura, for putting the link in. I will just mention to all of you a couple of things. Rachel kind of said, hey, if you'd like to sign up for the training, she's encouraging you to do that. In FY26, we'll be doing the training again, and the dates are not set yet. But if you would like to be a part of it, I know there's a lot of people on here that have already gone through the training. But if you would like to, please reach out. I will put my email in and I'll keep a running list and we'll let you know when that comes up. If there's additional training that comes up, we'd love to have you join that as well. I did mention the SIG, the Special Interest Group. And right now that SIG has been very integrated with Illinois, but we're really looking at ways to expand beyond our Illinois borders so that we can talk and learn and grow with people from all over the country and all over the world. So that's coming up as well. Does anybody, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute. There's just a couple of things that I want to finish up with, and then I'll be quiet and let you ask questions or make comments. First of all, if you are not already on the PDN Pulse, we'd really encourage you to get on. That's what tells you whenever there's virtual learning communities and trainings and resources that are coming up. Also, if you have particular questions about either the UDL training, about the UDL guidelines, about doing something at your program, any of those, again, I'm going to put my contact information in the chat, and we'd love to hear from you. And Tara will be back soon, and you can also ask her, but for this week, ask me, because she'll give you a, hey, I'm out of the office response. And lastly, if you are looking for a professional development hour for this virtual learning community, you will be getting one. Give us a little time to get that out to you, again, just because Tara is not here, and this registration lives on her Zoom. So I'm going to need to grab that from her. So there we go. Does anybody, yes, and we're also having a summer book club. Hopefully everybody saw that as well. And that is the book Unlearning. And so it's not too late if you would still like to sign up. And normally, if I didn't have all these tabs open, I would go get you the registration link. So if you want to sign up for book club and you don't know, if you don't already see it in the Pulse, then please send me an email and I will make sure that you get that information. Leva, great question. Is there going to be any UDL workshops, et cetera, incorporating AI? That's a great suggestion. Thank you for making that suggestion. I'll take that down. I can tell you that I don't have one right now, but that doesn't mean that one can't happen.
Do you
All
know,
right.
regarding
Oh, thank you, Natalie, for the book club link. You guys are awesome.
regarding the book club, if do you know, I don't know how it's going to be organized, but if you can't make all 3 sessions, is it worth signing up anyways?
Yes, that's a great question. And yes, you can still sign up. We would like for you to come to as many as you possibly can. We are going to have a shared doc. We're going to have a lot of resources for you. So don't let that keep you from signing up if there's one date that you are not able to come to. Thank you, Vicki. That's a great question.
Okay.
And also, I'll just put one more plug in for the book club. The author of this book is actually going to come and be with us the last session. So I think that's pretty cool that she's going to come and join us, and we can ask her questions and we can talk to her. And so that's, it's a lot of fun. All right. Any other questions or comments? Well, then let's give another round of applause to Michael and to Laura and to Natalie. Thank you so much for coming and sharing, and for Rachel, and also for the work that you're doing. And we know that there's fantastic work happening all over the state. We thank you for our learners, that you are making a difference every day in their life. So yes, thank you, everybody. This is the last S3 VLC for the fiscal year, but we'll be back at it again in the fall. So again, if you have ideas or suggestions of things that you would like to see, please reach out at any time. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.